Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to yet another edition of Take 3. I'm Anand Narsimhan. With me, Zakir Jacob and Raul Shivshankar, and we will focus on two or three important hints that were dropped or messages that were given. The Prime Minister, very, very emotional, with his hands literally shaking as the Dharm Dwaj, as he called it, went up atop the Ram Mandir on the 25th of November. Interestingly, he also made a reference in that speech which went back to his Panch Pran reference, and he's been repeatedly saying the colonial mindset and residue has to be removed for Bharat to actually emerge. Now, that's also set off a huge set of debates, and we are having this conversation in English. We are an English channel, so is English not as native to Bharat than any other language? Or should we actually separate the language bit and look at the intent with which this language is superimposed and the Macaulay reference? Is it possible for us to adopt this language, naturalize it, nativize it, while not or freeing ourselves from the thought process of the West and have our own Bharatiya thought process, or go back to that kind of a thought? So let's try and open this up and get everybody's first views before we fuel it further. And there is also the Samvidhan conversation that's got to happen. So we'll bring that in also in this edition of Take 3. Zakir Jacob, Macaulay, and the overall thought to leave us all like a generation, 3 generations down the line or 4 generations down the line, nothing but brown sahibs all around.
No, look, I mean, I agree with the fact that you said we're having this conversation in English, right? And that in part has to be thanks to the decision that William Macaulay took in 1835. Again, he didn't do it for any altruistic reasons. The British did that because they wanted a class of civil servants, government clerks and employees who would do the bidding of the British, and therefore it needed to be done in a language that the British understand, and the British imposed English on India. Now the question is, what parts of it do you take and what parts of it do you keep out? Now, in our own neighborhood, you have the example of Japan after Second World War. You have the example of China in the last 30 years. You have the example of the Asian tigers, Malaysia, Singapore, etc., who have all adopted what they wanted from the Western powers, the colonial powers.
There's Turkey also.
There's Turkey as well. Yeah. And they have adapted it in a way that suits them. So the point is, we also have to adopt it in a way that suits us. Is knowing English in a country where there are God knows how many million people who are fighting for a job, is it an advantage? Of course it's an advantage. Is it an aspiration? Yes, of course it's an aspiration. People want to send their kids to English medium school. They want to send their kids to convent education. Why? Because ultimately they see it as a pathway to greater economic prosperity. You can't deny that. You can't wish that away. I don't think that's going to change in the next 20, 30 years. I think what the Prime Minister was trying to get at was also that you don't need to ape the West, right? You don't have to get into watching Hollywood, Marvel movies and, drinking sugary drinks and all that. You don't have to adopt a Western lifestyle. But I don't think that necessarily means you give up on English as a means of your own economic and social advancement.
See, English is a language, but then it also became a class thing. You are intelligent, you're smart, you're educated if you speak English. That perhaps is a it's not the wrong way to look at education and literacy and understanding, because our languages are very, very deep in their literature, and someone who does not speak English but speaks any other language fluently cannot be less educated or intelligent. But that's how it sadly became. Raul? Is that what the Prime Minister was trying to say? That let's not try and benchmark ourselves with English and the West?
Yeah, I think that's what he meant. I don't think he's sort of militating against English per se. Look, transitions have happened in a large number of Asian societies. None of them really embraced English to enter the modern world. Look at Japan. The Meiji Restoration happened despite English. In China, which is today arguably at the frontier of pretty much every discipline that we can think of, they're not an English-speaking, Western-orientated society at all. If anything, there are, programs that are suddenly enacted before Olympic Games and so on and so forth to teach the Chinese some basic English so that they can try and break through the barriers when people come from across the world. Of course, it is a bridge to the West, and from that point of view, English remains critical for us. But again, English is a very Anglo-Saxon part of the very Anglo-Saxon, Anglosphere, let's just put it like that. The rest of the world is not bound by Anglosphere. I mean, my own daughter, for example, goes to school, and I find it quite amazing. Obviously, English is taught, but they say, well, why don't you choose another bouquet of languages? And there are French and Spanish and all of this. There's no mention of Chinese, for example. So it just tells us that we have grown in a society that has come to idealize the West to the point where even other languages that are spoken in Europe, etc., are okay to learn for our children, though I don't see why learning French will stand her in great stead. I'm just saying.
Correct.
So it's fundamentally, and most of our kids have taken French or have taken some other foreign language, which is again not Japanese or Chinese. China is, really going to be the dominant economy for the next 30 years at
Now
least.
Mandarin is being introduced.
But as you know, so it's not a priority, and I don't think even Indian parents kind of embrace it with the openness and the alacrity with which they say, "Nahi, bache, why don't you learn some Spanish, or some French,
Spanish, German, French, all of that."
So,
No,
Let's learn some Mandarin.
yeah, let's learn some Mandarin.
not just that.
Talks
See,
about
there's no
Mandarin.
Sanskrit is why not Sanskrit? Why not Marathi? Why not Assamese?
Yeah.
Why not Tamil or why not Kannada in the north and vice versa, and offer a multitude of Bharatiya languages? But the schools don't do that.
No.
Even in the so-called IB curriculum, you're reducing the number of languages and saying, oh, Hindi, if you want to learn, you can do Hindi, but we'd focus
So
only on
just finishing in
So,
10
yeah,
seconds.
Yeah.
Why is okay,
all
go on.
all the breakthroughs that have taken place in computing, a lot of them have happened in China, despite the fact that they don't know English
Yeah.
that well. So this to hold English up as the exemplar of progressivism and modernity, I think we've overdone it. And that's what I think the Prime Minister is trying to tell us, that look, there is a whole other sphere out there. Tap into it, especially your own. Look at your own cultures, as you're saying, whether it's Tamil or whether it is other languages. Languages are a conveyor belt of culture. And we are actually quite ill-acquainted with our own cultures. I mean, just the way some people in the north react to people from the northeast, or
But
people
was
from the
that not
south
the
react
intent?
to
So then that
people
means
in the
you're
north,
saying
and
that,
vice versa.
that Macaulay's intention
was to divide.
and
And create a-
that is a
create
success
this
today.
class.
That is a success
so
today.
see, look, it's going to be 200 years since Macaulay introduced this. Nothing stopped India, independent India, from
Just coming to
changing
that.
this. No. So here's the thing. I want to go back to one of the points that you made. Even parents in so-called IB schools, right, are actually discouraging their wards from taking Hindi or any other Indian language. They'd rather teach them German or Spanish or French. Why? Because ultimately it's all about your own economic and social advancement. You think, whether rightfully or wrongfully, I don't know. But you think if your child knows French, if your child knows Spanish, he or she has better prospects going abroad. Why? Why do you want to go abroad? You want to go abroad because you think your economic prospects will be better. Everybody wants to go to an Ivy League. Why?
Correct.
So the point is that, look, ultimately people are going to look out for themselves and their kids. And if they feel over a period of time, 70 years, 75 years, that English is a passport to success for yourself and for your kids, I mean, you can't change that.
Who made them think that way? Let's ask that question. Who made them think that only if you know English are you educated, and only if you know English? And this is, I'm saying, post-independence.
Yeah.
Pre-independence, the British may have wanted to do it and they imposed that. Post-independence, why is it still there? Why is it that international forms of pedagogy or curriculums are not tailor-made to adapt to Bharat? Now, the same IB curriculum in Portugal focuses on Portuguese as a language, and also Portugal does not only and more students from Portugal stay back in Portugal to study in Portugal. So this is documented. They also follow the IB curriculum.
But that's not the case with our kids.
Why?
Our kids want to go abroad.
No. So
Why?
Why? And that's also because parents are thinking that way. Now, I'm not just limiting myself to English. I'm just saying, are the policy makers, are the people who have decided the curriculum, are they themselves stuck in this mindset that if I speak English, I'm elite, and if I don't, I'm not? Rahul Shivshankar.
Yeah, I think fundamentally you're right. Look, we were all the products of a particular indoctrination that took place during Macaulay's time, the Victorian era and further on, as colonial subjects. And the reason why we were willing recruits were because we were told that our own culture, whether it is representative of people living in the south or the north, just indigenous Indian culture, is inferior. that even your language or your religions, the teachings within them didn't measure up to Christianity and the Western Enlightenment. In fact, Macaulay himself commented once, and this is now off repeated quote, that the entire sort of body of Sanskrit literature will fit one shelf of British writing. More than that, there was always talk fundamentally about how the white man's burden was to try and bring these primitive people up to a certain standard so that they could be civilized. And we sort of fell for it hook, line and sinker to the point where now we valorize. I mean, even if you want to go west or you want to go out of India, we never think east, we think west. You see, while look at the ratings for global universities, etc. China is up there.
Yeah.
But the last country perhaps that we will think, that's the last option for a lot of students. Though I'm told that education in China is as competitive, better, cheaper, but no, we will still look at the Ivy League because in the Anglosphere, the Oxfords, the Harvards, the Cambridges, etc. are sort of exalted.
What's stopping your IITs and IIMs from embracing, as you said, your own age-old wisdoms? They're also teaching in English.
So what I'm telling you is this, the exaltation which has come about. Look, I can tell you that there were, in my book, I've sort of referred to this, that the Radhakrishnan committee reports, which were the backbone really of early pedagogy in India, in independent India, amplified the need to understand English and use English as a bridge. And that was done also to bring about a more unified India, because we couldn't agree on what would be the lingua franca after independence between the sum of our many parts. So we said, easiest line of resistance. It is already the elite sort of government language. Let's just press on with it. And that is how we continued, rightly or wrongly. Of course, now the time has come to perhaps look back and say, okay, we've sort of done what we had to. And maybe that's what the Prime Minister is saying. Maybe the time has come to change.
Why
change has come slowly. In a country like ours, everything is, got to be sort of discussed, debated. We're not a country that sort of is consensus driven. We are argumentative country. So all these pivots will take time.
No, but despite that, now look at the lexicon as far as media is concerned. If it is an English channel, you have to say India. If it is a Hindi channel, you say Bharat. Why?
What's stopping you from saying Bharat in an English channel? Nobody's stopping you from saying that.
But this division was always there. Now, it's a different thing that we say Bharat now, but till a long time, if you were to write Bharat on your top band, you would be told, don't write Bharat, say India. But and the reference will always be India. And it was this.
If the Constitution of India says India, that is Bharat. Who's stopping you from writing Bharat?
What I'm trying to say is that it was always, let's not try and be this about it. Let's be honest and upfront about it. That on an English channel, when you write Bharat, Bharat क्यों लिख रहा है? India लिखो. It was a standard thing, and in Hindi automatically it would become Bharat and it would not be said India. Now it's only now recently that it is interchangeable. Now there is a channel on our network which is News18 India, which is a Hindi channel, and we write Bharat on our top band. But for a long time this was not the case. So that division was already there, that English mein Hindi India bolenge, Hindi mein Bharat bolenge, or in language mein Bharat bolenge. That itself shows that we have allowed ourselves to be divided right from the top.
Exactly.
And in our constitution, Article 1, why does it say India, that is Bharat? Automatically you split it there. It should be, this is Bharat, a union of states.
No, but it is
also known as India.
That's why they've used India, that is Bharat.
No, but it was not. It is never used, Zaka. It was never used interchangeably.
It was meant to be used.
It was meant to be, but it was never used. That's what I'm trying to say.
Anyway, the
division stems from there.
Again, I come back. So the flip side
Speaking in the vernacular meant you were a bumpkin.
And not just that. Vernacular itself is language of the slaves or language of the subjugated, right? Why use that term?
The point that Rahul was making, see, the difference between, let's say, having one common language or one link language in India as opposed to, let's say, in China. There's also the flip side. China also used to have multiple languages. Cantonese used to be spoken in large parts of southern China, including in Hong Kong and in the Guangdong province and all that. Today, nobody speaks Cantonese. I mean, the standardized version of Mandarin. It's called Puktong Hua. That's what everybody speaks. Now, the point is, do you want to be like that here in India? I mean, I come from Tamil Nadu. I'm very proud of the fact that I can speak Tamil and I can read and I can write, and I'm very proud of that fact.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up that to learn
nobody should be
another language.
Nobody should be asked. Zaka, what I'm trying to say is that we as Bharat, because we have 84 different languages spoken, 27 official languages, thousands of dialects, we should have adopted a system where it's not a one language system, it's a multi-language system, and every Bharatiya should speak at least 2 Bharatiya languages, non-English, non-foreign language. What I'm trying to say is, what has stopped our policy makers, those who are drafting our curriculums, from saying that CBSE schools, ICSE schools in North India should offer languages spoken in West, East and South India as the options, not foreign languages? What stops, schools in South India saying that you will get, along with learning the local language that you speak in your mother tongue, you have to learn one language that is spoken in the north of the Vindhyas. Not necessarily Hindi, it could be Marathi, Gujarati or whatever, it could even be Kashmiri, Sharda. That's not a problem. But that's not something which is happening. Now, so who do we turn around and say is at fault for this post-independence? Who do we say who's at fault?
Well, obviously,
last 12 years also we've not done this.
Look, the system never changed. The rulers
Why
and
are
masters
they called
changed.
English medium schools? Why are they not called
the
language medium
The
schools?
rulers and masters changed, but the system never changed. The system remained the same. That's the simple one-line explanation for it. People were so carried away and were carrying the white man's burden, and they didn't think that they wanted to be associated with what, as you've just said, the vernacular which was used as spat out really as a bit of an insult. They didn't want to go back to the bumpkin way, so to speak, and that was it.
No, so then
if you're indoctrinated to believe that you have to read Shakespeare and only if you can quote it that you are really of some caliber, then what do you think is going to happen? And that's going to take some time to wear off. It will take at least a couple of generations.
Who's stopping you from quoting Tagore or quoting Bankim Chandra or quoting Bharatiyar or quoting
so let me tell you, if you're not taught that in your syllabus,
what I'm trying
how are you
we
going to quote
are
it?
all taught that.
No,
I mean, we were all
I'm
taught
sorry.
Tagore.
We were taught hang on. Between Robert
Bharatiyar.
Browning and Robert Frost, I was taught one Tagore poem. Why the hell do I have to read Robert Browning and Robert Frost?
No, but
I mean, why am I talking about certain, various cultural impressions that don't even exist in India? A patchwork in a quilt of, of beautiful English Shire countryside. I give a damn about the Shire countryside, my dear friend. And if you didn't speak the Queen's English, I mean, you're talking about Bharat in India writing in English channels. I remember people of my parents' generation. That anchor can't speak English, the Queen's English. Even now you get it.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, at least your English is clear. I can't even understand what the other person speaks. That is the attitude.
No,
it's not
see,
just learning English.
There is
but
a
it's
difference.
speaking
There is a
it
difference.
right, We've got to speak it in a manner
See,
that sounds right. And you have a politician who is very fluent in speaking like that old chap.
Why are you
I'll
begrudging
tell you.
him that, man?
I'm not,
Come
I'm
on,
not,
he's got a
I'm
good
not, I'm
accent.
not.
What's
I'm
your
not, I'm not.
problem?
Good accent. You see, he's got a good accent. That's it. Caught in bold.
what I'm trying
I can speak like this,
no,
but
no,
it's
why
not a
can't-
good
just-
accent.
just because you don't want to speak like that.
The Scottish speaker.
No, just because you don't want to speak like that, or can't speak like that. Why are you begrudging
digressing.
that?
I'll tell you why.
A Scotsman.
Okay, no, we're digressing.
A Scotsman
Just
speaks English.
Desi Rahul
A
Shivshankar.
Scotsman speaks English, but the English say we can't understand him.
This
What
is
is this man
the
saying?
this is the fun part or the breaker, in an act as generally when it's written in plays. The fact is, when you're on an English channel, you're supposed to speak that language well. If you're on a Tamil channel, you must have your Tamil right. If you're on a Hindi channel, you must know your Hindi right.
But it's
That's
funny,
because that's a language
in England, in the BBC, they started dropping the
No,
so-called classic
English is
accent.
spoken English.
In fact, now in the BBC, if you speak in that Ponzi accent, you are actually problem.
Yeah.
So diversity there has been embraced to the point where you have a large number of dialects that have come through, and presenters are speaking those dialects and those accents.
They are one language, many dialects. We are many languages and thousands of dialects. The idea is to try and understand, is language the fount of spreading this mindset? And if that's the
a
case,
language
then
is a
what's
fount
going
of, is the
then what's going
repository
to
of
change?
culture.
Okay.
And your cultural coordinates for about 30 years after independence lay somewhere between Oxford Street and Oxford. Okay, that's
Yeah.
the problem. And you valorize that, And it takes time to change attitudes. This young generation that has been born free is questioning things. And you also are now, obviously, and you know it yourself, you look at your own timelines, when you speak like this, what do you get? Backlash from the entrenched elite. So there is this. And the Prime Minister himself has come up with a phrase. Now, whether it's right or wrong, the Khan market consensus is what he called it. What does he mean? He's not talking about people who sit and have coffee in Khan market. No. He means a group of elite across the country that only valorized a Western moray, rightly or wrongly.
That you have to integrate this with perceived economic advancement. If a language is learning a new language is only useful to me if I find some degree of economic advancement through it. Which is why even today in 21st century India, people's aspiration is to get into the IT field, and everybody's saying IT is going to be taken over by artificial intelligence. They still want to join IT, or they want to join artificial
economic
intelligence
advancement,
because it's economic advancement. If you can convince me that learning Maithili will advance me economically, I will learn it. Why will I not learn it? So why are people learning German? Because they want to, not because it's an easy language. It's an extremely tough language. They are learning because they want to go for jobs. It's as simple as that. If you can convince somebody living in Delhi that if you learn, Tamil, you'll get a job in Tamil Nadu, and it's a highly industrialized state. It's at the forefront of manufacturing your iPhones and so on. Why wouldn't people learn? People will learn. It has to be linked to aspiration and economic advancement. Otherwise, people are not going to voluntarily learn.
Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, look, fundamentally.
But then in that case, what job am I going to get, or my child is going to get if they learn French?
But I'll tell you,
what job is my child is going to get if they learn Spanish?
Yeah, so that's the other very interesting question, because Europe is shrinking under its own feet, right? Economically.
Correct.
So prospects aren't very bright there. In fact, their own young who are coming through their own ranks are not getting jobs.
In fact, one of the fastest growing languages across the world is Sanskrit. More people are actually turning
and there is
to
a
Sanskrit
backlash. But anyhow, look, what I'm saying is, if you ask me what needs to change, pedagogy needs to change. Now, it can be imparted in any language, but curriculums need to reflect the full works, for example, of Kalidas, rather than forcing us to read 20 plays of Shakespeare and so on and so forth. I don't want to read about Francis Bacon, quite frankly. I want to also read a little bit about my own culture and how it grew out of India and influenced other cultures. So a lot of things need to change at the pedagogic level. Until that doesn't happen, we're going to have this skew, right? Where there are going to be a certain number of people who are going to say certain things, and there are going to be a certain number of people.
But should this direction not be enshrined in the Constitution? Should the Samvidhan not dictate what should be taught, and the fact that somewhere mandate the proliferation of languages?
Look, I mean, if you're asking me that question since we've come to it, look, I think the founding fathers very clear that what political or economic ideology you want to adopt should be left to the decision of Parliament. It should not figure in the preamble and lock you into doing something. Now, willy-nilly, you might be socialist in your outlook, you might have socialist pronouncements, but to have that locked into the preamble is not worthy and wise. It's also undemocratic fundamentally, because it stops and prevents conversation around a particular subject and a particular orientation. So I don't think this should be in the Constitution, but certainly it can be part of the guide, NEP, or whatever the policies are that are going to come out. I think those can be sort of tweaked.
Yeah, so again, we know about the French Revolution and Columbus going to America and all that. Why do we not know, and why are we not taught about how Hinduism spread to Southeast Asia?
Exactly.
Right? No one talks about it. How Buddhism went to Southeast Asia. These are the things our kids need to be taught. That's somehow not there in our textbooks.
Why is the Bali Jatra celebrated in Cuttack in Odisha? Why is it done?
We have to watch
because
YouTube
they
videos.
Travelled all the way to Bali, and that route was there. Who are the ships that were built? And we were a strong naval force both on the Bay of Bengal and towards the Arabian Sea. And where is that?
I mean, you need to go back to your roots and start teaching that to your kids. Whether you teach that in English or in Tamil or in Hindi, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, you have to seek a degree of pride in who you were before this 300 years of colonization. I think that's what the Prime Minister is also trying to do.
I think our generation and a generation, 2-3 generations before that weaned us away from our own language and made us focus on a language which thought, like Zaka said, would help us towards economic prosperity. Now this generation, and I think that's the generation after this has to ensure that the future generations start going back to learning those languages which are from our own, not just for economic prosperity, prosperity, but also for a certain level of cultural mooring and understanding that we are a nation which is very, very rich. And if opportunities are happening here, developing here across the various states of our country, then it only makes sense that we learn more languages from here. Let's start looking inward and eastward rather than westward overall in terms of we can do that. Gents, thank you very, very much. Thanks.